Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine.
Here's Perry, to Gar. Here's the jump shot.
Jumps to Marley, a long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Another Sir Charles, and he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to the 7 Seconds or Less podcast. This is a podcast about the NBA with the Phoenix Suns focus. My name is Max McCauley. I am one of your hosts, your other host. His name is David Nash, and he joins me right now. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, Max. It's the 5th of July where I am, but happy 4th of July to you and all of our American listeners.
Thank you. I'm sure we all appreciate that. I imagine it's probably just a pretty normal day for you over there, huh?
Very normal day over here.
It's still an exciting time, though, because we're right in the smack dab of a free agency.
Yep, we may not get our big 4th of July announcement this year because everyone's basically done, but there are a few left, which we'll get into much later, but it's been an interesting period so far for the NBA and for Suns fans.
Yeah, I think I predicted that this one would go really slowly, but I think that might have been really wrong. It went really fast.
One of the predictions we got wrong. We're about 50-50, I think.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into that later. We'll talk about how well we did. But today we're not going to talk so much about what we predicted, but more about what actually happened. We're going to react to what the Suns did, what we think the Suns might be planning. And then we're going to go into what some of the bigger teams did, the Golden States, the Lakers, the OKCs of the world. And I think we might do a little bit of random things we liked, things we didn't like, things we were perplexed by, just in a hodgepodge.
Yeah, I think it's there's some interesting stuff to talk about. We don't have to be all Suns focused.
No, this is an NBA podcast with a Suns focus, David.
Exactly.
But before we get into any of that, David's going to do what he always does. He's going to regale us with a story of Suns past in the Did You Know segment.
Thanks, Max. A little bit of a different one this time, and undoubtedly the biggest news for Suns fans so far this free agency period, well, official news I should say, was probably the signing of Trevor Ariza, something we didn't really see coming. A surprise nonetheless though, but Max, did you know Phoenix becomes Ariza's 7th NBA team?
Wow.
And I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you name the first 6?
Do I have to go in order? I think I might be able to name them. I'm not sure I can go in order.
Bonus points for order, but I'll just take the 6.
Okay. I know he was on the Lakers very early on.
There's one.
He was on the Wizards at some point.
There's
I think
2.
he might have been on the Nuggets.
No.
No? Well, Knicks?
Yep, he was drafted by the Knicks.
Okay. Houston, obviously.
Yep.
Phoenix now. And I guess I'm missing one or two, right?
You're missing the Orlando Magic and the New Orleans Pelicans.
Oh, those teams suck anyway.
So going back to where it began, as I said, Ariza was drafted with the 43rd pick in the 2004 draft by the Knicks as a 6'8" small forward from UCLA. As we said, he bounced around quite a bit early on in his career, but interestingly, this is the first time he's signed as a free agent with any team other than the Rockets. In 2009, Ariza signed for 5 years with the Rockets for $33 million. And it was actually with the disabled player exception Houston was granted. Max, can you think which famous Rocket might that have been for?
Was it McGrady?
It's the other one.
Or Yao.
Yep.
One of their injured stars.
Yeah. So he was signed with the exception they got for Yao, which I thought was interesting. And then again in 2014, Ariza signed with Houston. This time for 4 years. It was technically a sign and trade with the Wizards. That's the contract that has come to an end just now and gives Ariza career earnings of $68 million. So here we are now in 2018, Max, and Ariza is a member of the Phoenix Suns. Typically, he's worn number 1 in the NBA, which we obviously know is taken by a little special someone for the Suns. He's also worn number 3, but that's Dudley at the moment, as we know. He wore number 4 in college, which, as we know, is Chandler. But he was when he was drafted with the Knicks, he actually started with number 21, which he hasn't worn since, which I thought was interesting. As we know, 21's recently vacated by Alex Len. Doesn't have a great history with the team, to be honest. Before Len, it was Hakeem Warwick.
Yuck.
And ironically, out of the 13 players who've worn it, 7 of them have only played for the Suns for a single year, which obviously Ariza has signed for a single year with the Suns. Probably the most famous of those was Richard Dumas. Maybe Ariza will continue the tradition and go back to where it all started for him and wear 21 in the purple and orange. What do you think, Max?
Well, I hope he doesn't pick up the coke habit that Dumas had.
Let's hope he stays away from that. Although he does have plenty of money to spend.
It'll be interesting if he gets the 21 because Ayton obviously 22, Bridges 25, adding a lot of low 20s.
Yeah, I'm throwing that one out there and seeing what we get on official announcement day. I'm sure that's when they'll probably let us know.
Right.
But if we get on to the actual on-court part of the signing early in this episode, but I'll leave you with one final Ariza Suns tidbit for now. I was looking at his career, and it turns out he's actually played the most games in his NBA career against none other than the Phoenix Suns, 39 games. It also means he's taken and made the most shots in his career against the Suns, and played the most minutes against them too. Finally, Max, his career averages against the Suns are 13.4 points, 5.9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, and 1.8 steals, along with 1.7 three-pointers made. They're all higher than his actual career averages, and that kind of a stat line next year will be exactly what the Suns are after, I think.
Yeah, apparently he kicks ass at Talking Stick Resort Arena, so that's great.
Exactly. So there we go. That's a little bit of a different one with the Ariza signing this week.
I liked it. You kind of did the retro story on a current event. That's
exactly.
Cool. Well, we'll get to Ariza in a second, but I think we wanted to start with what I would say is probably the big news right now, the Devin Booker extension talks.
Yeah, we started with the Ariza signing on July 1, but quickly we had the Booker bombshell of him not being happy with Tyler Ulis's waiving, and then a couple of nervous days before we finally got the better news of an imminent extension for Booker.
Yep. I was listening to the Ryan Russillo podcast earlier, and I thought he had the best way of putting the Ulis Booker thing. He said he thought it was ridiculous that anybody got concerned about the extension talks, and what he compared it to was when a bride and a groom are about to get married in a week and they have a big fight over the caterer, like the kind of food he's going to make. They're not going to call it the wedding because of it, right? They just get a little mad at each other, but obviously they're still going to get married.
As someone who got married a little earlier this year, and I know you have plans to very soon too, I can tell you that those fights are definitely going to happen, and at least in my experience, they don't stop the wedding from going ahead. So it's a great little example there. Yeah,
I thought it was really good. And yeah, in terms of practical implications of all that, the only thing I think it might possibly affect are, a term here or there, maybe a player option at most, but Booker signing for the max, he's going to sign it Friday as soon as the moratorium ends. There's really no concern here. There's no concern.
As you said, I think player options definitely in play. My prediction, which is maybe with a little bit of hope, is that we get the full 5 years without the player option, but just a little motivation for Booker this year will be that it can be a 30% max if he happens to make one of the All-NBA teams. I think the Suns will throw him that bone in exchange for no options.
Yeah, that'd be a really interesting thing. I mean, obviously, as Suns fans, we would all be over the moon if Booker plays well enough to be an All-NBA player, right? That's the goal here.
Exactly.
It also wouldn't be the best thing ever for our cap situation.
It wouldn't, no. It means about another $30 million for Booker, from about 158 to almost $190 million over 5 years.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. I think the main concern wouldn't be so much the money over time. It would be more how it affects summer 2019, which is obviously what they're targeting. Yes. What would the effect be there, if you know off the top of your head?
That's a very good question. Just give me a second to bring up my cap sheet.
You've been doing so many of these cap sheet spreadsheets. You're working hard on this crap.
Yeah, I'm trying my best, Max. It's something that I get into. But if we have a look at it, I believe on the standard extension that he's going to get next year at the 25%, That's the 27.25 million. So that's the more likely scenario under the current cap. But if he did happen to jump up, it does jump all the way to 32.7. So you're looking at a difference there of, $5 million plus.
Okay, that's pretty significant.
It is very significant. I mean, the way I'm kind of offsetting it is if he happens to make an All-NBA team, then he's clearly made another jump, and you'd be happy to have him on your team as a member of, one of the All-NBA teams. But it is the fact that you can't, mess around with that and kind of backload it or anything is a factor that you have to consider.
Yep. Totally agree. It's totally worth it. I'm not trying to say I hope he doesn't make an All-NBA team, but it is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, if you can get him locked in at that 160 instead of 190, you're going to take it every day.
Yeah, Booker, be an MVP 2 years from now, not an All-NBA player next year.
Exactly. It doesn't. That's a good point. It doesn't matter at all in any of the years after next year. It's next year is the one that matters.
One more thing I want to say on the whole Ulis thing. I think what we're looking at, what we're seeing now is it was overblown, obviously, but the fact that we all jumped on it kind of shows you just the way we feel about this front office, the way they handle personnel.
Yeah.
It would just be nice for them to stop having these things happen. It really would. Just please stop having these kind of things happen.
Yeah, I think I saw you sum it up and a few other people sum it up in a similar way. It's like, in isolation, it was a non-story almost. But with the history of Ryan McDonough, him recently bringing James Jones on in what we, it hasn't clearly been said, but we kind of all took as a move in the direction of having someone to talk for, the players' side of things. Mm-hmm. It was a concerning thing. The things that have come out since it happened, the report from Scott Bordeaux and a few other things that I've heard, it was a little bit of a beat up. The Suns essentially tried to follow protocol, which they probably should do in this scenario. You can't have Tyler Ulis finding out after anybody else. He's certainly the first person that needs to know. They also share an agent, which is a weird thing, or not a weird thing, but something that you can't really factor in. And it sounds like they couldn't get onto Booker when they tried to tell him. So
yeah, that's the story they're telling, that they did call Booker and he just didn't respond or whatever. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe that was true and Booker didn't know that, and that's why the report came out and they told him later. I don't know. Anyway, all I know is I don't think it's going to impact anything going forward.
I don't think it's going to impact anything going forward. And the last thing I'll say on that is one thing that both of us predicted correctly in last episode, and that's that we both waived Tyler Ulis.
We did, yeah. And we both said Booker was going to get that extension, which it looks like he's going to get. Anything else on the Booker extension?
No. Other than, we kind of touched on it already with the, if he jumps the All-NBA 30% max. But, we have lost about 18 mil in cap room for next year by signing the extension now. Mm-hmm. All I'll say on that is that there's still plenty of cap room, and there's still plenty of other ways that they can get more cap room. So I don't think it is the end of the world that, we don't have $40 million and Booker going into restricted free agency.
I totally agree. It's the thing I think cap space is important, but it's also overrated in this way. If your team isn't good and no one wants to come, it does not matter if you have cap space. If your team is really good and people want to come, your team can make it happen. There's ways to make it happen. It's a little overrated sometimes.
I agree, and I think that's probably the perfect segue into talking about the Trevor Ariza signing.
Let's do it. I was a little surprised to see the mixed reaction on this because I thought it was a grand slam dunk, whatever word you want to use for it, A+ for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think my initial reaction maybe was on that side of a little bit of caution, but that was more around Ariza probably not being my number one target to play the power forward position, which is what I think he's been brought in to do. But, we'll see more on that later. But in terms of, it's one thing that we both got wrong in our last episode, and I think that's purely based on the fact that we just didn't think there was any way in hell he takes a 1-year deal with the Phoenix Suns. No,
yeah, I called him overrated, and he was overrated in the context of a 4-year, $60 million deal. I don't think he's nearly as overrated as the deal he got.
No, I think it's a great deal, and as we kind of alluded to as we merged into this discussion, is the Suns want to be good next year. there's varying degrees of that, and I think even you and I disagree a little bit on that. But this is a signing to give them a little bit of credibility, kind of like the Philly signings last year, where they've got another vet, a great locker room guy by all reports. I probably admittedly didn't realize how much he brought to that side of things. I took him as a little bit of a guy who early in his career only really played well in contract years and things like that. But the more I read about him, there's that great Zach Lowe article from earlier, I think, this year.
Everyone should read that.
Which is a must-read for sure. I can tweet it out to anyone who hasn't read it and comes my way. But the takeaways in that article is that he is, one of the big presences in that Rockets locker room, and you pay a premium for that when you're a team like the Phoenix Suns who desperately need it. So
yeah, I think he's matured into that as he's gotten older. I don't know if that was necessarily how he was early on, which is the most usually the case with players. It's hard to be a veteran leader when you're 20.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
people keep saying one of the pushbacks I've heard, and I'd say most people like this deal, but the people who are questioning it, they'll say things like, well, we already have Tyson Chandler and Jared Dudley. Aren't they the guys who were supposed to be the veteran locker room presences? And the answer I have to that is those guys aren't good. It matters so much more when you have someone who's actually good, who's setting an example by playing defense every single night. If you're looking at somebody like that, it's very hard for you, as, say, Devin Booker, to look at him working his ass off on defense and then just let your man blow by you constantly. It's just the example of having someone next to you playing in the crunch time, playing well. It sets such a better standard than a locker room guy could possibly set.
Exactly. And, all I would kind of say in response to that is this signing is what Chandler and Dudley was supposed to be
right.
in year one. A few things happened there. Chandler probably wasn't quite what everybody expected. And Dudley very quickly kind of stepped aside to put Chris into the starting power forward role. So he's, the intention of what they were bringing him in for kind of changed, almost immediately. So, but you don't handcuff yourself just because they were supposed to be the guys just for while they're on the roster for, the remainder of their contracts. You don't say, oh, well, they were supposed to be the guys, so let's not sign anyone else. If that's not working, you bring somebody else in. And as you say, someone who's going to play big minutes, going to push these guys in camp, going to play defense, going to expect everyone else around him to play defense. I think it's a home run signing from that respect. And it's more of a home run signing if you're of the belief that the Suns, want to keep cap room going forward, because maybe some people don't understand this, maybe they do, is you have to pay probably $3, $4, $5 million extra to get a guy in for 1 year because he doesn't get the guarantee or the security of multiple years. So look at the JJ Redick signing. He signed for 12 this offseason. He signed for 20 something last offseason. That's it's just kind of what you have to do to get a guy across the line for the first time. Now he's a little bit more comfortable. Philly are in a little bit more different position with their cap space, and they still made a way to find a deal for this upcoming season. Yeah,
and McDonough suggested that could happen with Ariza too. But the thing about this is it's such a low risk signing because if it flames out entirely, it's a 1 year thing. He's gone.
Exactly.
You might be able to trade at the trade deadline if your team's not very good, but he's playing well. You might be able to trade him for something. That's somebody that other teams will want. The only opportunity cost, and I've seen people make this point, the only opportunity cost really is just you can't sign a whole lot of other guys this summer, right? Because you pretty much spent your entire cap room this summer on Trevor Ariza.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall and know if that was the plan all along with the front office. There was a story, I think just yesterday, from Brian Windhorst about Golden State being quite into Ariza, which is a funny little sliding doors moment that we might get into later with the Boogie stuff with the Warriors. But
we'll get into that. But by the way, Trevor Ariza would have been so good on the Warriors.
Well, I've got in my notes. It's a huge loss for Houston what the Suns have done here, and it's a. That's what Golden State would have been trying to do, is take away from Houston, but also add to their own team. They've kind of missed out on that He may have even been a better asset for them than Boogie Cousins, I think.
Which is one of the reasons that I am so confounded by. I don't want to pick on Nate Duncan because I already did on Twitter, but analysts who are like saying this is a good signing for anyone else, but not for the Suns. Like, how is it not a good signing for the Suns? It's a 3-and-D wing who can compete at the highest levels of the game and can show the rest of the Suns how to compete in the highest levels of the game. How could it possibly be not a good signing?
Exactly, it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to waste my time and go through those people's timelines, but I can almost guarantee that they were the same people who have made fun of the Suns for tanking and resting players in the past. So, this is it's a change for the Suns. It's a change of culture. They're trying to fix things. They're trying to make amends for their mistakes. If, people keep dragging them back to what they've done in previous seasons, then that's their prerogative. But
I love it so much, too, because it accomplishes two goals. Mm-hmm. Not only does it make the team better now, which Booker obviously is demanding and which the front office wants and ownership's pressuring for, it also maintains flexibility for the future. It checks both boxes.
Exactly. And he's coincidentally or not coincidentally is the exact same dimensions as Bridges, who they just brought in, who I'm sure everyone would love to see Bridges play 32 minutes a night next year or something, but that's not how the Suns are going to win basketball games. Ariza should be the one playing the bulk of those minutes with Bridges learning off him. And, there's not really a better guy for Bridges to learn off than Ariza.
Yeah, Bridges actually compared himself to Ariza, I think, on draft night, right?
Exactly. So, I think it just ticks so many different boxes. And the final thought that I have on it, just kind of going through that Zach Lowe article and a few other things, is, he seems to be a real open system kind of guy who, maybe one of the... I was very surprised that he was leaving the Rockets because I'm sure they would have offered him something worth staying. But, maybe he didn't like the way the Rockets were going and where he kind of had, just been asked to defend and sit in the corner and, while Harden and Paul play iso ball. So, he seems to be really open. There was a couple of stories, a couple of anecdotes from... his past career with the Lakers and things on the way that he likes to play. So, I think he's going to have a lot of fun under Igor and really be a great tool for Igor to use in multiple ways.
Yeah, so do I. And from what you've described to me as maybe the resident Suns Twitter expert on Igor's system, it requires players who know how to play basketball. Like, you have to know how to play, and Reese's somebody like that. He's played on, as you mentioned earlier, 7 different teams. He's played at the highest levels. He won a championship with LA, right? He
won a championship, so he brings that same championship pedigree that Igor brings.
He has so much of that kind of stuff that I think it's just invaluable for the Suns to bring someone like him in.
Yeah, as I said, ticks so many different boxes. Sure, it could all go wrong somehow, but as you say, then you've still got the options of trading him at the end near the trade deadline for something, and you still have the option of completely clearing him off the books next year. So, there's not too much wrong to find with it, other than I'm just not 100% sure if Ariza himself is going to want to be banging with power forwards all season long, and that's probably my only concern. However, I just don't see that they do this deal without, selling him on how they're going to play him and him asking those questions. So if they went ahead and did the deal, I'm going to take that as everybody's pretty comfortable with, his role moving forward and they've got it all worked out.
And I do think there's probably a better chance than Suns fans who are currently in honeymoon mode with Mikal Bridges want to admit that Mikal's not totally ready right away, even though he's an older rookie and all that stuff. And Ariza might have to close a lot of games at the 3. Maybe there's a better 4 than Mikal. So that's the thing about Ariza. I think that he's going to be able to fit with a multitude of lineups.
Yep, I agree, and it's great to get excited about rookies, and we'll certainly be leaning on Ayton pretty heavily next year. But I think the point on Bridges is right. He may struggle early on. We have to be prepared for that. And again, you're giving me lots of good segues here, and that's probably a very good segue into talking about what the future holds for the Suns for the rest of free agency and filling out the roster, because there's some question marks that I have around point guard and what we're going to roll with there.
David and I have a slight difference of opinion on the Suns point guard situation, I would say. You think that's fair?
I think that's fair. Just to lay it out very quickly before we go in depth, I think I would like the Suns to sign a point guard and not roll into the season with Brandon Knight as the starting one and Okobo as the backup one, I suppose. And I believe, or actually, I'll let you explain what your thoughts on that are.
So, first, before I even start, let me say I'm not against signing a point guard. Obviously, if it's not a multi-year deal for someone who doesn't deserve it. Like if we get a 1-year guy who's competent, I'm not going to be upset about that. It's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
But if we go into training camp with this as our roster, I'm comfortable. And the reason why that is there's a couple things. So first, I'll start with a nice point that I saw by Rod Argent on Twitter today, where he told me one of the reasons why he's comfortable with Brandon Knight, if the Suns are comfortable with him, is that Igor is coaching him every single day right now in summer league practice. I think Igor's going to be much more aware. In fact, I know he's going to be much more aware of Brandon Knight's current capabilities than we are.
Yep.
So if they're comfortable with it, I'm more comfortable with it. Also, Shaq Harrison's a guy I really like. I think he'll probably make the team. He can't shoot at all, but he plays great defense. I think he's a pretty decent fit next to Booker. You'd like to see him improve the three-point shot, but when you're dealing with guys like him, you can't really have everything.
Yeah.
I think Okobo he's going to be competent-ish. He might be a slight negative, but he's not super young. He's not a teenager. He's 21 years old, right? So he's been playing professional for a little while. I think he's going to be a little more ready to step into the NBA than maybe your Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to take a random 18-year-old point guard.
Yep.
And then also, I think I'm more interested in watching Booker play point guard than you are. Not so much because I think he's going to be good at it this season. I think he's probably better off ball this season. But I think that if Booker's going to reach his pinnacle as a player, his 95th% outcome, it's going to come as a primary initiator or at least like a secondary initiator, somebody who's a high-level playmaker. So I'd like to see him get more reps at that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think my counter to that would be, I would also give the caveat that, if Brandon Knight is the starting point guard to start next season, I am not going to be up in arms, tweeting my anger towards the franchise. All I would like is there to be a little bit more competition for that spot. I think you make a good point that if Igor is, watching him in summer league training and is happy to roll with him, then sure, I'm not going to doubt, the coach that I've professed my love for. But for me, what it is I don't want another disaster like the last couple of seasons where things go pear-shaped very quickly and we're kind of scrambling for options. I'd like to give Igor more options at the point. I think it's very risky with a guy coming off an injury like Knight and, the healthy history he had before that injury, and then Okobo, a rookie, as his backup. So, it is personal feelings, but it's also mixed in with kind of where I see the team going as well. I find it really hard to bounce off the Ariza discussion and that kind of changing of the culture and the Suns really trying to win next year and then not believing that they will, bring in a more solid option for Igor to work with at the point. So that's really where my opinion comes from.
So let's go there. What options are you looking at? Where do you think would be a solid? Because I think the unrestricted free agent options are pretty poor, but there's some decent trade targets.
There are some decent trade targets which hopefully wouldn't cost you too much and then still give you the flexibility that you're after, say, next season. And you'd probably have bird rights on a lot of these guys as kind of backups as well. So you could kind of overpay with an asset for, whether it's a Beverly or, Corey Joseph and Darren Collison are both sitting in Indiana right now with, Oladipo and Tyreek Evans just getting signed. So, maybe you could pry one of those guys loose. And then there's Jeremy Lin and Spencer Dinwiddie in Brooklyn, who there's a bit of a logjam there as well. I'm probably still all in on Teodosic, if I'm honest. I know Gambo has, basically ruled that out with his tweet, but I'm kind of going on that may have been a tampering backup
that was my theory.
So I'm kind of, following that theory as well as maybe thinking, that Gambo's cold streak can continue. But, what I will say there is that, I think July 15 is his guarantee date. The Clippers have 16 guys contracted at the moment, and that doesn't count Montrezl Harrell, who I'm pretty sure they'd like to bring back. So they're sitting at a point where they may need to waive one or two guys, and Milos is sitting there as the guy with, the contract that makes sense to waive.
You're not going to like this, but I think I would rather start Brandon Knight than Teodosic.
And that's where we differ, I suppose, and that's fine. But, I will say that...
Can I get into the problem with him real quick? My problem with Teodosic?
Sure.
First of all, if you're designing a system around him and relying on him, he's going to disappoint you because he's going to get hurt.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, if he's not the worst defensive point guard in the NBA, he's up there. And we already have defensive issues with Booker. I'm just worried about people just blowing by that backcourt. And I know Brandon Knight's not king of defense or anything, but at least he has the potential to play defense, and maybe in a smaller role next to Booker. And apparently his attitude has been adjusted to an extent. Maybe he plays a little bit better defense. He's at least should be better than Teodosic at least.
Yeah. I think there's solid points. I'm not, I think my counter to that would be, I'm not advocating for Teodosic to be, the starting point guard of the core going forward. It's by all means a stopgap measure, just somebody to run the offense, because I think what the Suns have really lacked in the past, particularly when injuries have hit, and this has really had an effect on Booker's game, which we don't want next year, is a secondary playmaking option next to him that's solid, not too erratic, can run the system, and I'm just not sold that Knight can do that. However, I will say, if those guys go to training camp and Knight beats him out for the spot, I'm all for it, because then Teodosic can back him up. He's not being paid a ridiculous amount of money to be a backup, and he would be a fine NBA backup. And then you're at the point where Okobo's only playing if he's really earned it as well. So, that would be my final point on this, is I just want these guys to earn the minutes rather than them be given to them. And I really have, in my own projections, tried to build out a roster that is quite deep with a lot of competition, because that's the other thing that I think the Suns have lacked in the last few years, is guys have just, and particularly the young guys, have been given roles that they don't really deserve. So I'm just advocating for competition more than anything. If Knight becomes the starting point guard out of that, then great, I'm over the moon, because it means that they think he's the guy.
What do you think about Shaq? Do you think the Suns are going to give him a fair shake? Because I feel like Shaq could maybe beat out Brandon Knight.
I think he could. I've got an interesting theory on Shaq, just with the way his contract looks, is I wouldn't be surprised if Shaq gets the Mike James two-way contract of last year. So I think if we waive him sometime in summer, he gets $50,000 outright, $50,000. So that's kind of a thank you payment for and then he can go on the two-way, where if you play the full 45 days, you get another $250,000, and then maybe they make a trade by then, free up a roster spot, and like Mike James, he gets the full contract. Hopefully stays on the team, unlike James, who was almost waived immediately. But yeah, I'm looking at that second spot with Alec Peters in there and King already being guaranteed one two-way spot, and I'm just going to throw that out there, as with this roster crunch, I could see that as being another way that McD uses the kind of tricky two-way rules to the team's advantage. Yeah,
I think that's a pretty nice prediction. I could really see that happening, and I think a lot of it might depend on what we see in about a week. Actually, less than a week. On Friday, they're going to start. Shaq's actually on the Summer League roster, so it's going to be really interesting to see the allocation of minutes between, and also the performance of Shaq and Okobo.
Yep, I think they'll try and give both of them solid minutes to, see what they've got. Obviously, you're in an evaluation period with Shaq. You've kind of got to make these decisions. Same with Davon Reed, who's had his date pushed back. Another prediction that we got right in our previous pod, and it may come down to being one of those two left on the roster if we do make a signing, or if we want to bring Alan Williams back. Pour some out for Alan Williams.
Yeah, I think unless they can't do it, like if they get the free agents they need to fill the roster spots, then they won't bring him back. But I think they're really going to bring him back if they don't.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that they are. I was a little bit worried, although I think I was just reading too much into it when the Suns kind of put the thank you message out to him, because I felt that if they we're just going to bring him back, they wouldn't have done
Yeah,
that.
but I think they have to do that because if they don't know they're going to bring him back, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, I think, as I said, I think I was reading a bit too much into that. But, yeah, I'm hopeful that, if it was me, I would probably waive Reed, move Shaq to a two-way, and that allows you to bring one more free agent in with the room that we have, as well as bringing Source back on, a little bit more than the minimum, just to kind of pay him what he's worth, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I can see that happening. Anything else you want to talk about on this front, or should we move to the big NBA stuff?
No, I think that's really all there is to look out for Suns free agency going forward. Is there's just only a few little tools to play with, and outside of that, you're really looking at a stretching of Chandler or Dudley, which I think we can pretty much eliminate.
Yeah, I don't think that's not going to happen because of what they did with Ariza. They're targeting 2019 free agency. The only thing you might see is a trade. That's the only thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was my only other note was, maybe they go against what we've kind of said here and trade for a existing kind of above average to star point guard. However, maybe what we're about to get into with some of these big teams that are all in the West, if the Suns did have plans to do that, maybe that's kind of, made them wait another 12 months just to see how things shake out.
Yeah, there's no rush. There are some titans in the West. And we're going to talk about, in my argument, 3 of the top 4 teams in the West, probably. We'll see if you agree with that. What do you want to start with? You want to start with Golden State?
Yeah, let's start right at the top with the defending champs.
Okay, so the Warriors sent Twitter into a tizzy. Was that yesterday? I can't remember. I think it was maybe 2 days ago. I can't remember. But they signed DeMarcus Cousins for the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is like $5.3 million.
Correct.
And that caused like a sensation of people saying the NBA is over, it's stupid, it's wrestling now, all sorts of hyperbole and ridiculousness. Here's the thing: it's a very nice signing. You don't often get people with that talent at that price. He suffered the worst injury you can possibly suffer at around February last year when he tore his Achilles, especially for a big man. Yep. I think only Dominique Wilkins has ever recovered and played the same way after a torn Achilles. It just doesn't happen. It kills careers.
Yep.
Especially the year after the injury occurs. Like there's a very good chance that DeMarcus Cousins doesn't contribute at all next year. And if he does contribute, it won't be until January or February. They're going to keep him out until then. So he's not going to be impacting wins and losses before that at all. Mm-hmm. When he comes back, I think he's a fine fit. I think he's going to fit into their token center role better than any of their token centers because he can shoot. He can do some post-up stuff that they haven't had before. He can do a lot of interesting things.
Yep.
But when it comes down to it, in the Western Conference Finals, when they're playing Houston again or whoever, he's not going to be on the court at the end of the fourth quarter if Steve Kerr has a brain, because if you get him in a switch with James Harden, he's going to destroy him. If you try to play traditional pick-and-roll defense with him, James Harden destroys that. He's not going to be able to be on the floor. Their best lineup is still going to be the death lineup. It's not going to impact the end of games. It's sort of an overrated thing to me.
Yeah, I totally agree on this one. And, what I will say is because of the injury and when he's likely to come back, even though I think he's still saying training camp, he's kind of shooting for the stars a bit. But the Warriors don't have the regular season or majority of the regular season to kind of figure this out and maybe change the way they play a little bit. So it's not really a plug and play type scenario when he does come back healthy. So it's a big risk for the Warriors. I think, if a guy like Boogie calls you up and says, I want to sign with you, you kind of have to take it.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not really buying that storyline that they're throwing out there. But anyway, it's a risk worth taking, but it is a risk nonetheless because, that was their one, I guess, asset to add something decent to the team, as we touched on.
Well, and the point that I've seen made that's really good on Twitter, it's more about depriving the rest of the teams of him.
Yeah, pretty much. I think, the Warriors have definitely struggled with bigs. So to take Boogie out of a Western Conference rival is probably a smart move. They'll use him in some interesting ways, I'm sure, but yeah, they just won't have that much time to integrate him. And as you said, when the going gets tough, they're gonna go back to what they know best, and that's probably the death lineup, or the goatee lineup, as I like to call it, which I think is a far better name.
I like that.
But yeah, he's just not really going to be a factor when it matters, unless things drastically change or he comes back, far sooner. So the Warriors definitely got stronger. They kept Durant, they kept Looney on the minimum, which I thought was really surprising.
That was underrated. That was nice.
And they've really only lost McGee. I think McCaw's still out there. That's one but again, he didn't really play significant minutes for them last season. So yeah, they're essentially rolling it back with the addition of Cousins, mainly somewhere around January or February, I think.
Last thing I want to say about this, and then let's move on to the Lakers, which you're going to lead on, is even if this works out gangbusters, DeMarcus comes back in January is ridiculous. Same DeMarcus, the Warriors win every single game from January onward. They sweep the playoffs. Every single game, right? They don't have his bird rights. So he's not going to sign for $5 million again. He's going to get big money. They literally, it's not a luxury tax thing. They just can't sign him for more than the exception again. So he's gone. Exactly.
It's actually, and I kind of touched on this, it's actually more of a perfect signing for Boogie than it is for the Warriors.
Totally.
In that, there's no pressure on him to come back because the team will just keep rolling. He can come back, win some basketball games, look good, get his paycheck after that. It definitely won't be the Warriors unless we're all not seeing some crazy thing that they're going to do to keep him, which I just don't think is going to be possible. So
no, the only way they keep him is if he's really, really horrible and they just signs the same deal again because he's awful and didn't get to show himself.
Exactly.
Or if they trade I don't know, Clay and Dre or something like that, which it's not going to happen. So they're just not going to keep him.
They're not going to keep him. So, and what's probably going to change is nothing because, the Warriors are going to be the favorites again without Boogie going into next season. So, yeah, not too much has changed, but we all like to complain every once in a while. It's,
it's fun. It was fun to react to it and go, oh my God, the Warriors got DeMarcus, but it's not what it appears, I guess is the point.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned the team that's favored to win the title. That is right now the Lakers, because Lakers fans are stupid. Why don't you tell us why they're stupid, David?
I mean, I'm not going to call them stupid. They signed the best player in the game.
No, not the Lakers. Lakers fans are the ones betting on him, to be clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think the market is obviously set expecting another move. I'm not sure if that move's coming anytime soon. If they did add someone like Kawhi, I guess the team becomes, a little more dangerous. But as presently constructed, they signed the best player in the game and then surrounded him with some of the worst signings of the off-season, as far as I can see. He said he wanted cerebral players. They went out and got JaVale McGee, Lance Stevenson, Rajon Rondo, who is a smart on-court guy, brought back KCP as well and lost Julius Randle in the process. So, I wouldn't say LeBron's wish list that he would have handed over at the start of free agency to build around him. I don't think. But
I wouldn't think so either. But apparently he's approving of all these moves.
Apparently he's approving, but apparently he also just doesn't care right now. That's kind of the gist that I'm getting. Whether that's him wanting to build more into this being a lifestyle choice more than anything, rather than him kind of just joining another contender. He kind of, I love LeBron and I don't like a lot of the hate that he gets, but I do like, I think he likes to control the narrative a little bit. And I think he probably likes the narrative that he's gone to the Lakers, at the basement level and then kind of built them up. And if they win a championship in, say, year 2 or 3, he looks very good for it. So, I do think it's interesting that, and we're going to touch on OKC after this. Everyone thought, Russ was the guy that no other star would want to go play with. And, it turns out that, maybe it's LeBron. There's not too many, even the mid-level kind of free agents. No one kind of came out of the woodwork wanting to sign straight away when LeBron went to the Lakers, which is pretty interesting.
The word is he was having a very hard time when he was calling around pre-free agency to other stars and other good players, trying to convince people to come to Cleveland with him. Like, just no one wanted to come.
Yeah.
And Paul George obviously chose OKC over him.
Yeah, which was a a surprising choice, which we'll get into.
We'll get into it. It was a great choice, surprising choice, but great. The one point I'll make on all the awful signings the Lakers made, like if these are your last signings you make at the end of July when you've made your other signings and they're on minimum deals, like fine. I still don't like them, but fine. Mm-hmm. They made these signings immediately. I think KCP and JaVale were within an hour or two after LeBron signed.
Yeah, and they gave Lance the full mid-level as well.
What are they doing? Why?
That's crazy.
Lance Stephenson's bad. He's not even good. It's not just his personality or his off-court stuff, which are bad, but he's bad at basketball.
The only thing that I could think of was that, if they struck out in this free agency, they were obviously going to keep cap room for next free agency and kind of roll it back and go again. And the only thing that I could think is that basically all these deals were already locked in pre-LeBron decision, and they just had to say yes to them. So
KCP definitely was.
KCP definitely. Even Rondo, I think, even though the Rondo move seems like one that you would make after LeBron joins, it's like signing him for $9 million just doesn't make any sense.
Well, did you hear? I sent you the Woj thing where Woj I don't know if he speculated or reported. I think more speculated that the Lakers did this as a message to Lonzo because they're mad that Lonzo leaked that injury.
Yeah, and again, that could have been pre-LeBron or not. And Lance definitely, I think, that one is probably the most confusing one with his history with LeBron. He's a ball-dominant guy. He's a non-shooter, basically. And they gave him, the full mid-level, which is just nuts. So that one, I think, is one that was probably teed up beforehand that they just, couldn't back away from and have just gone with. The other thing that I will touch on from a Cavs perspective is, did you see that story about them locking floor seats in for the next 3 seasons back in February?
If you signed that, it's your fault.
It is your fault, but can we just add that to the pile of like what a dick Dan Gilbert is?
Oh, he's awful. He's awful. And I really think that if Dan Gilbert was like salt of the earth, great guy, everybody loved him, LeBron would probably still be in Cleveland.
Yeah, I don't think they had a good relationship at all. I think they kind of buried the hatchet before LeBron came back and signed, and then it kind of went all downhill again from there. Yep.
The last thing I'll say, unless you want to make another point, is that it doesn't take a basketball genius to know that the best way to utilize LeBron is to surround him with shooters. They haven't done that. They've surrounded him with non-shooters. Like if they ever play Rondo and Lonzo together behind him, like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think we'll end it on that and say that as presently constructed, there's an argument that this roster's better than the Cavs one that worse than the Cavs one that he just left.
Yeah, I think it is. Kevin Love's clearly better than anybody.
Exactly.
I just want to make one very last point, because people might think that we're being a little bit hypocritical because we said that we love how the Ariza thing was 1 year because it's low risk, and these are all 1 year, so why are we not okay with this?
Yeah.
The big reason for me is that, all the Suns players are they're babies. They're all teenagers and 20-year-olds. LeBron's going to be 34 in December. Like, you cannot waste a year of his prime right now. You just can't.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's important. And it's definitely watch this space because maybe they'll make a move and kind of flip it all at some point. But, it's a little strange as presently constructed. So let's end it there and jump into the Thunder.
Okay, are you ready for this? This is probably my hottest take of free agency.
Go for it.
I think that the Oklahoma City Thunder have given themselves maybe not a huge chance, but a significant, worthwhile chance of winning an NBA championship either this year or next year.
Wow.
They have done exactly what I've been hoping they would do for a while now, and that is surround Russell Westbrook with an all-defense, like powerhouse defensive team. Mm-hmm. Plus, they have a secondary star who's part of that all-super defense team, but also has some offensive capability, can be the second guy in Paul George. It didn't work perfectly last year. Part of the reason why it's hard for stars to mesh together unless you have a perfect fit like the Golden State Warriors where everyone can shoot. That fits together perfectly. But remember, LeBron and Wade, they didn't fit together perfectly right away. Like, it takes a while to learn how to play with somebody if you overlap a little bit.
Exactly.
And also, I think a big reason why I'm saying this is the addition by subtraction they're going to get when they stretch Melo, which I'll let you get into the cap implications, but they're going to stretch Carmelo Anthony because they're not going to be able to trade him because he has a no trade clause and no one wants him anyway.
Yep.
But they're going to stretch him, and once they get him off the team and just every single player besides Russell Westbrook on that team is a plus defender, besides maybe Abrinas, but he might not even play that much, they're going to be awesome. Like, and people forget how good Andre Robertson is, too. Andre Robertson was out for them in the playoffs last year. He's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, I was going to say he's almost like a free agent signing, really, isn't he?
Yeah, he almost is, especially if you're viewing it like compared to the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And Nerlens Noel, he's not going to play a ton, I don't think, but he's really good. And if he can get back to where he was for like 15-minute stretches when Adams isn't out there, he could be really, really awesome for them.
Yeah, I think he's a great backup for Adams. I think they've really struggled. Obviously, there was the Cantor duo who was kind of playing backup minutes to Adams, which gave him something completely different. Whereas kind of Noel can come in and do a lot of the same things, probably not as well as Adams, but they can kind of keep playing the same way, which is, I think, something that the Thunder have really struggled with when they've gone to their bench unit or without Westbrook or Adams on the floor. They kind of have to change the way they play entirely. But now it's just going to be, as you say, kind of Russell Westbrook's team with the right tools around him, a secondary star, as you say, and definitely no Melo, because there's both financial and on-court reasons for why you would just stretch him. I don't think he's going to give a cent back. I don't think he's going to take any kind of a buyout because he knows the implications for the Thunder right now. And basically, it's that every dollar that they spend, they're actually paying about $6 in tax. So the Felton signing yesterday that was for the minimum actually cost them an exorbitant amount of money. They basically, I'm not going to bore people with the numbers, but by simply stretching and waiving Melo, they save $95 million in tax this coming season. So that's a business decision that also has some bonus that you will find on court, I think. But without that business part of it, it might have been harder to justify. Like, why would you just let a guy like Melo go? Maybe you can turn it around, blah blah blah. But when you add that kind of dollar figure, it's going to happen. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
So, yeah, absolutely. He's gone. And I just want to justify my take that they can win. Not that they're going to win or that they even have a really good chance to win, but that they have a recognizable chance of winning a title.
Yep.
Here's why. People are going to yell, obviously, first of all, Golden State. And that's that's a good point. But one of these years, either this year or next year, Golden State's going to suffer some adversity, some major adversity. It happens to every single team.
Exactly.
They're getting older. Someone's going to get hurt. They're going to suffer fatigue. They're not going to win 4 titles in a row. I'd be shocked if they did.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I really like that, the NBA as a whole isn't as kind of defeatist as what we see on, maybe Twitter and things. Houston went for it last year and got very, very close. And they're probably joined by OKC this year. The Lakers, if they can make some moves, you never discount a team with LeBron James on it, obviously.
Yeah, and those are the other 2 teams, right, that people will throw in my face and say I'm crazy about. But Houston, Chris Paul is not a picture of health, and he's getting older and older. It's hard to keep him healthy. They lost Ariza, as we mentioned earlier. They've kind of been weakened. Mm-hmm. The Lakers, as we've got into, they're not going to be good this year. Maybe they'll be really good next year. Unless they make a trade. They're not going to be good this year. And they might not be good. Who knows? LeBron's getting older. He could finally suffer an injury. I think people tend to get too set in stone on what they think these teams are going to be. There's a lot more unpredictability.
Yep.
And I think the Thunder have at least given themselves an opportunity to possibly get into the finals and then, who knows, maybe win one.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. They're going to be up there. A good point around the Miami Heat example. It takes a little while to get things going, and I don't love Russell Westbrook, but I really, really love Paul George, and I want to see him succeed. And it was cool to see him make this decision. I think probably the last thing I'll end on is with the decision, it kind of means Westbrook, George, and Adams are being paid a ridiculous amount of money. So I'm just going to throw a really long-term prediction out here, which I may not be able to bring up again until, pod number 88 or something. But, I think Adams will eventually be traded because they've just got too much money in those 3 guys now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. He's going to be the odd man out, and it's too bad we just drafted a center. It's not too bad. I'm excited for Ayton, but Adams is one of my favorite players in the league, so I would have liked to have been one of the teams trading for him.
Yeah. What else have you loved from free agency so far?
I think my favorite signing of all of free agency, besides Ariza, just because I'm a homer, is Julius Randle to New Orleans.
Yeah.
They got him on a crazy discount. That sets up a perfect three big rotation with Anthony Davis, Nikola Mirotic, and obviously him.
Yeah.
He's a dynamo. He got so much better last year. He is almost unstoppable on offense when he's playing well.
Yeah.
He can switch on defense. I think it's going to be just so good to have Anthony Davis playing center with those two, Randall and Mirotic, kind of doing opposite things sort of, but both effectively around him.
Yeah, and I think we saw him play with that kind of bit of a chip on his shoulder last season. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be even bigger this season. I think, something we touched on with DeAndre Ayton, kind of needs that extra motivation sometimes. And I think the Lakers, essentially renouncing him and giving up on him, albeit for cap reasons, I think, we're going to see a really motivated Julius Randle next to Anthony Davis next year. And, I think that could be one to watch for sure.
Okay, your turn. What do you like? What do you not like?
What do I like? Speaking of running it back, Utah are kind of have brought all their free agents back, Favors, Exum, and Raul Neto as well. I like the stability of that. Again, kind of touching on what we have already with OKC and things. I think they were kind of building on something. They've got some internal improvement to go, so kind of them running it back and not shaking things up too much, I thought was an interesting move for them and one that I'm positive about. Running it back that I don't love so much is probably the Spurs, who brought Gay back, brought Marco Bellinelli back from his previous stint with the Spurs, which wasn't great from at least my memory. And there's a huge question mark over Kawhi right now. So, that team, particularly if they do let Kawhi go, just seems to be in a really weird flux.
Yeah, to go to Utah first, I was really happy to see that second year of Favors contract with $18 million for over 2 years was non-guaranteed. That helped a lot. The Exum thing, I believe in Exum. I think you do too. We're both pretty high on him, so it seemed like a lot of money. 3 years, 33, but I think he might live up to it. I mean, he's got a lot of talent.
He did himself some favors with those in that Rocket series, I think.
Yeah,
obviously, eventually got injured again, unfortunately, but that's kind of been his big question mark. But I think he kind of just teased just enough to say, we should bring this guy back again and give him one more shot to stay healthy.
Yep. One last thing I'll mention on them is they still have their mid-level exception, so I think they might go out and get something with that so they could be even better.
Yep.
And just to go to your Spurs thing, totally agree. I don't know what the Spurs are doing. They've been a model NBA franchise for so long that it's been weird to see them make head-scratching moves lately, like the Bellinelli move and then the Gasol extension I didn't really get.
Yeah,
they've
probably
weird stuff.
The last two off seasons, I would say they've kind of deviated from their solid approach, I think. So, a little bit weird and, nothing drastic or, dramatic there, but I guess it's a little dramatic when you compare it to how they normally operate.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to throw out two more names that I didn't like.
Sure.
I don't understand why the Ersan Ilyasova deal to Milwaukee, I think it was like 3 years, 21, or something like that. And then
I think
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the third year has come out as non-guaranteed, which makes it a little better.
It still blows, but it's better.
That's one that we were wrong on in our prediction pod, but I wouldn't say wrong as from a correct move standpoint, but just wrong in what actually happened in real life.
We underestimated how dumb NBA teams can possibly be.
Exactly.
And then the other one is Doug McDermott, who I like fine, but I think that the Pacers sort of jumped on him way too early.
Agreed, and another one where we were a bit off with the contract that he got. Not by too much. I think we gave him the room exception, but or offered it to him. But I really like what Indiana has done. Like they lost Stevenson and GR3, but brought in Tyreek Evans and McDermott, who are great fits. Probably, I think, as you're alluding to, the only question mark is the actual contract for McDermott. I'm not sure they needed to give that.
Yeah, so did it come out if any of the McDermott years are unguaranteed? Because he did a 3-year, $22 million.
As far as I know, it's solid again.
Yeah, see, I just think that's terrible. I just don't understand. Who are you bidding against? Is the question I want to ask these teams. Like,
exactly.
Are there other teams trying to make that deal to Doug McDermott?
Well, I think I've followed free agency for quite a few years now, and I think there's a pretty interesting thing to see there, that it was one of the first deals done. And whenever that happens, it's obviously the team is, you can probably tell, is a little panicked that somebody else is going to jump in and offer him a deal, so they just kind of overpay.
Mozgov.
Not as bad as that, thankfully.
No, nothing's as bad as that.
Yeah.
All right, do you have anything more, or do you want to move on in 7 seconds or less?
I don't love what Portland have done. Just to touch on them, I love the Seth Curry one. Another one that we were a little bit off on the other way. We kind of offered him a 1-year deal at decent money to come to Phoenix, and he took really, really low money. The market obviously wasn't there for him, or he just loved the fit in Portland. I'm not too sure, but
I was kind of stunned by that. Like, one thing I thought was, like, if you're going to sign for that, why not just go to Golden State and play with your brother for the minimum?
It seems weird. The Stauskas one was weird, particularly with what they paid him whilst renouncing Connaughton and Napier. Just really, really odd. And they let Davis go as well, which I think has pissed off their franchise player, from what I can tell.
It seems like it.
And I'll just say, to rub salt into the wounds, it seems like they missed out on a sign and trade with Boogie, purely because Boogie and Nurkic share agents. And for my one friend who is a Portland fan was very, very unhappy with that story. So not a great off season if you're a Portland fan, I don't think.
No, not at all. And even with all the stuff we said about Boogie earlier, how not as high on him as we are, like, it's still worth the risk for a team like that, especially.
Yeah. I'll just, to finish off, I'll throw some names that are still out there, and just straight off the top of your head, let me know where you think they're going to sign. So
okay,
Isaiah Thomas,
Orlando. That's a perfect fit for him. I tweeted this the other day. Like, that's the only team I could see him going to that makes any sense, and it makes a lot of sense to me because they need initiation, they need somebody to score, and they have the perfect front court with Bamba and Isaac behind him. So I love it.
Yep. Jabari Parker.
Oh God, I guess Chicago maybe, but oh man, it's not fun to be him right now.
Levine.
Chicago also, but also not fun to be him right now.
Marcus Smart.
Boston. I think they're going to come to something that's going to be a really nice value, like a 4-year 40 or a 4-year 46, something like that.
Yep, and I think probably a similar story with Clint Capella.
He is going to re-sign in Houston. I think he might. It seems like he doesn't have a market. He might get screwed and have to sign for something a little under what he wants.
I'm a bit sad for Capella. I think I tweeted his sad face emoji seemed to be around the time that LeBron made his decision, and there was a meeting with the Lakers, and I got a feeling that maybe he was going to get a max or close to max offer from the Lakers, which would have forced Houston into a scenario to match, and now he's going to have to go back with the tail between his legs and sign for something that I'm sure Houston are going to love, but is probably not his true value, unfortunately.
If I'm Capella's agent, I don't know who Capella's agent is. I don't know what other players he represents. I don't know if he has a lot of leverage, but I would go to Atlanta and be like, Atlanta, please give him a max offer sheet, please. And in the future, I will give you whatever. I'll help you out with free agent meetings, whatever. Just please give Capella a max offer sheet.
It's basically his only option right now, that or the Bulls, I think. But, as we've said, the Bulls are probably going to go more of a, maybe Jabari and re-signing Levine.
Well, the problem with the Bulls, too, is they just drafted Wendell Carter and Lauri Markkanen in back-to-back years.
Very true.
If by chance Houston doesn't match, which they will, but just in case they didn't, they'd be screwed. Whereas Atlanta, if that happened, they would just have Clint Capella on their team.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, or should we move on?
I think we can move on, Max.
All right, we're going to do 7 seconds or less. This is the segment where one of us asks the other questions that the other has to answer within 7 seconds, and for which he hasn't prepared for these questions. David has no idea what I'm going to ask him because it's my turn to ask him questions today. You ready, David?
I am ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, this is going to be Summer League themed because, as we mentioned earlier, Summer League starting Friday. I am going. I cannot wait. I wish you could come.
I'm very jealous. So there seems to be more and more of Suns Twitter all going and probably hooking up in Vegas. So that definitely makes me jealous. But yeah, it all starts probably a couple of days after you're listening to this podcast. So I'm not sure what questions you're going to ask me. So let's dive in.
Let's do it. And one more thing I'll say is that, just a preview, we're probably going to be doing some podcasts on the Summer League, maybe with some guests. So
Yeah, that'll be our focus for the next couple of weeks. With you in Vegas, we'll hopefully have another one in about a week's time after you've come back and recovered.
It's going to be a recovery process. Okay, question number 1. The Suns' first 3 games are scheduled. The rest of them aren't because that's going to be a play-in tournaments, right? So the first 3 games are Friday against the Dallas Mavericks, Dennis Smith Jr., possibly Luka Doncic. He's not ruled out yet.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday against Marvin Bagley and De'Aaron Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Monday against Orlando with Jonathan Isaac and Mohamed Bamba. Which of those games are you most excited for?
I would say Orlando, because I'm probably most excited for Ayton to see how he goes, and Bamba's probably the biggest test.
Bamba in the pre-draft process kept quoting over and over the fact that he had been 4-0 against DeAndre Ayton in pre-college play.
Well, there you go. I think Bagley Ayton's kind of fun, but I think they'll both kind of dodge each other a little bit with how the teams match up, and but there's it's pretty much one-on-one when it comes to Ayton and Bamba. So I'm really excited for that, and I also loved Mo Bamba, so I'm in the draft, so I'm kind of really interested to just see those two go at each other.
We're already way over 7 seconds, so I'm going to ask you a follow-up. Would your answer change if Luka Doncic were playing?
Yes.
I mean, we got to see that, right? That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Question number 2. Which player on the Suns Summer League roster, other than DeAndre Ayton, are you most excited to watch?
Interesting. I'm going to have to go with my boy Bender.
Ooh, interesting. Explain.
Well, I've only got 7 seconds, Max.
But... Nah, I'm giving you an example.
I mean, everyone's seen it. Anyone who follows me has seen it. I really like that he's playing. Obviously, Marquise Chris is not, for whatever reason, we don't know.
I think it's because he has played so many NBA minutes, but go on.
Yeah, but Eagles coaching, I think it's a really good chance to play Bender and Ayton together, see how they work together. I'm not ruling out that Bender could somehow start at power forward if everything goes right for him. So yeah, I'm just really interested to see that whole dynamic.
He certainly should start at power forward for the Suns in Summer League, which they're going to run out one of the most fun starting lineups ever. Like Okobo, Reed, Jackson, Bender, and Ayton. I mean, come on. Yeah,
there's a lot to choose from there, but I'll stick with my boy.
Okay. All right, final question. Suns players aside, which player are you most excited to watch play in Summer League? Also, I'll exclude Bamba and Doncic, so we already talked about them.
Interesting. Probably a guy that's already actually played, but will be there in Vegas as well, JJJ. He's done some pretty flashy things so far. It is only a small sample size. I'm not overreacting. But with all 30 teams in Vegas for the first time this year, so yeah, he'll also be there in Vegas. And I loved him as a prospect as well. So excited to take in as much of him as I can.
8 for 13 from 3 in his debut as an NBA player, including threes off movement and from Stephen Curry distance.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the Suns and Memphis somehow match up in the Summer League tournament, because that'd be really fun.
That would be fun. It's always interesting to see how the bracket shakes out after those initial games.
It is. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe. As always, it very much helps us out. David, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Max, and good luck in Vegas.
Thank you so much. It's going to be fun. It's going to be tough. One more thing I'll say. I'm MaxMCC11 on Twitter. He is the 4 Point Play on Twitter, in case you don't follow us already. Thanks, guys.